Sometimes I've heard it said that as you get older, you quit learning. You're not a student anymore. Learning is for young kids in school and in college and the like. But that is definitely not true. I don't think that's true at all. In fact, the older we get, the more we learn. And I've grown to know that that is true just by the fact that sometimes when I get into a text and a scripture reading, all of a sudden I'm learning all kinds of things, new things that I didn't quite understand before. I'm learning as I go. Well, for instance, today's gospel reading, it is a continuation of last Sunday, the 5th chapter of Matthew. Now, you know this to be true. Bible scholars call this, as a general title, Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And I'll give you the first verse as it began. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. You see, this was Jesus' first sermon, his first message. In Matthew's gospel, different than all the rest, it is this moment that he chooses to lay out what he feels and believes is the most important for people to hear. Different than the other gospels where Jesus performed miracles and where Jesus does other kinds of things that sets him apart. In Matthew's gospel, Jesus is the teacher. He is the one who is talking about the law and how it is that Jesus brings this law now to completion. Jesus has done some healings previous to this. He was baptized by John, and now he goes up on the mountainside in order to teach the people. Going up on the mountainside is representative in Matthew's gospel for a particular reason, because he now is like Moses. Moses, who brought the law to the people of Israel, went up into the mountain to receive the law, and now Jesus goes up on the mountain then to explain the law, to put it before people. You get that? That's an important distinction. That's something I learned. And now, so we have the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5 in 3 parts. And the first part was the Beatitudes that you heard. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who seek justice. All of those things. And today you have Jesus saying to the disciples and subsequently to the people that you are salt. You are light. And he works that. Going up on the mountainside is significant in that now you know this is going to be something very important. And Jesus will spend that time explaining it to his disciples and to the people who are there. Well, learning is not always an easy thing, is it? Some of you are pretty good at it. But learning is not always an easy thing. Ask our confirmation students. Well, it's not. I remember when I was in college, and because it was an integrated class, you had to take chemistry. Chemistry, as far as I was concerned, had nothing to do with the real world at all. Which obviously it does, but that was really not really the thing. You could memorize the elements of the periodic table, right? You could get that down. But it was in the application of all of that was important. There were formulas to make. There was how things react with one another once you put it together. And hopefully you didn't blow up the chemistry. You could always tell when someone didn't quite understand how that worked by looking at the ceiling, because there was always something hanging from it. Right? When we look at our faith, we're looking at practical application of it. How it is that we can come to understand it, not in theory, but in actual practice. As we leave from this place today and we go to our homes, in our neighborhoods, in our community, in our schools, and all the other places, we apply what Jesus says. We learn from what Jesus is saying, and then we make good use of it because it's important to us that what Jesus taught. He tells people today in this part of the Sermon on the Mount that we are salt. We are light. And in that, we are to make things in this world and our lives have more flavor, be delicious, to be shared. and light so that darkness is dispelled and people will see what's going on. Well, one of the things that you find in the news quite regularly, and there's a television ad all the time, if you are on your computer at all, there's a little pop-up that comes up from Norton virus protection or some other place, and they want to protect your identity. There are programs that will protect it from someone stealing your identity. You know, your identity is kind of an interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, it's out there on the web, and there's all kinds of things about you. You take that Ancestry.com or whatever, and they take your DNA, and they know more about you than you maybe want anybody to know about you, right? Our identities are important to us, and we want to protect them. But really, when we think of it more of a philosophical point of view, who are you? Who are you, and really, what is your identity? When Jesus says today that you are salt, or you are light, how many of us have ever really thought that was who we are? You know, we went to an event called Wiggle Your Toes here just on Friday night, and a whole bunch of people that I had no idea who they were, only that they were at this event. And you stand there in line, you're going to get a little treat or a beverage or whatever, and you have you strike up a conversation. Well, basically what we're saying to each other is, who are you? Tell me who your identity is and what you are about. And it always starts out with, well, my name. I'm David Hanson. Where do you live? Well, I live out in Watertown, Minnesota. Well, where's Watertown, Minnesota? Well, it's over west of town. And then you ask another question of each other, and you have family and kids, or where did you go to school, and it's where did you work. Our new members here today, they had to write a whole paragraph about that. And they shared hobbies and other things that they felt were a part of their identity. And the reason I tell them and ask them to do that is so that as you read that in the bulletin and elsewhere, you then learn a little bit about them so that you can get to know them. And you guys can be a part of the same church and have that background for each other. You get to know their identity. Well, at the party, at this event, when you goes, there's a certain point where that stops, where you quit asking stuff because you get to a point where maybe you don't want people to know more about you. For me, it's that part where you go, well, I'm a pastor. Yeah. Because usually that ends any kind of fun conversation. Interesting, though. I was standing in line to get a little dessert there, and there was this young man who was there. He had lost his leg in an amputation because of an accident, and he was wearing, help me out here, the cap that skateboarders and people snowboard and stuff wear. It's kind of a certain style, kind of a, yeah, cool. Okay. Anybody? You ever seen that hat? Well, you have? Okay. Good. Yeah. Well, anyway, he's taller than I am. He's got this hat on. He's got kind of snowboarder, extreme sport kind of clothing on, like. And I saw him down front before, and so I struck up a conversation with him. And as I stood there learning more about his identity, who he was, he shared the story of how he lost his leg in the accident that was the end. And he got ran over by an outboard motor, a boat. And he was near death in this. And as he shared that story, he said, I believe that in this tragedy, that God was there for me. He said, I literally felt God's presence, and I believed I saw God in that moment. And through all the Wiggle Your Toes and the whole event, he got this new leg, and then he got inspired to do extreme sports. He got inspired to do skateboarding and then snowboarding, and he was on the Para-Olympic team, winter sport team, for that whole thing. And he says to me, his identity, he just feels so fulfilled to tell his story of that to others and how he standing there with my dessert saying, I was embarrassed to say I was a pastor. The light of Christ was in him. And the light of Christ was shining out through him to others to see. And I think that's true of all of us in different ways. Salt is so important to our daily diet. We need salt. Salt does something. How many of you, any of you Boy Scouts at all? Anyone in scouting? Okay, you've been on scout trips. You've been out there, and the guys got to take up the slack. They got to help him, so they have to cook the meals. And so here are 7th and 8th grade scouts, guys going, all right, we got to make stew, right? And so the health department learned to approve of this process. And so there's the cutting up the meat, there's the peeling of the potatoes, there's putting the carrots in, there's boiling the water from the lake, and all of that. And you get the stew going, everyone is really hungry, and the candy bars ran out 2 days ago. And so in that hunger, in the moment, they taste that stew. They go, that's not very good. What's it missing? Salt. Seasoning, salt. It brings flavor to life. It brings flavor to the things that. And so when Jesus says, you are like salt, he's saying, you as Christians are out there to bring flavor, to bring this goodness out of things that don't taste very good sometimes. And so we are salt. The light one, though, that's a more powerful one for us, because in that light it shines out to others so that all can see. Can a city on a hill be hid? No. If you've ever flown in an airplane in that night, looked out and seen the light from all the different cities as you go past them, right, on a clear night, it's incredible. That light shines. That light shines so that the city can be here. I know Peace Lutheran is not much, it's not a big hill out here, but it does feel as though it's a bit of a hill. You look down towards the river valley, you look down towards downtown, and you feel like you're up on a hill. And since I came here, I've always had that feeling that we are to be a light, a city built on a hill, a church built on a hill. And the light of Christ in all of us together is what is to shine out to all those in the city around us, those who travel by on the highways, that they should know Christ in God's glory because the light is in us. Well, I'm sure many of you have a person in your life or others that you have met that have been that light. That kind of stand out as light bearers in this world. And so I have a couple. And one's name is one you're all familiar with, and I don't know her, know her. Only I know of her. The woman's name is Mary Jo Copeland. And the reason I know her a little bit is because Stephanie had their children in her class that she taught in preschool kindergarten. And the story was amongst her kids, well, mom's helping the poor people. And you hear her talk about that, but when you get to meet Mary Jo, this isn't, the big business end of it at all. This is helping people who are in need. When Jesus said, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who are mourning, blessed are those who seek justice, all those things, that's the people that Mary Jo Copeland is helping. She's not doing it for herself, but she's letting light shine from her into those folks with the help of many others. The other one is Bud Hellman. Bud Hellman was a bricklayer. He wore out 2 trowels in his 50-some years of bricklaying. Many a wall and many a business and the like were a part of what he did. But Bud got involved in Habitat for Humanity and became kind of embedded in that at our church. And he was the one who invited others to come to help build a home for someone so that they had a place. He was a light bearer, not because he wanted glory or anything like that, but just because God had gifted him with a skill and a passion to help others and let Christ's light shine from him. I'm sure you have many of those people too. So today, for you, think of this. If Jesus is saying this to the disciples on the mountain and subsequently to all of those who have gathered around Jesus, He's saying it to you and to me. He's saying that you are salt. He's saying that you are light. And then he says, let your light so shine before others that they will see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. So, we leave today to shovel snow. But we also leave today to bear the light of Christ to others. Amen? Amen. Amen. Let's stand and join the